Hey guys, welcome to my first unit overview for Total War Warhammer. In this series I'll be featuring and discussing the various units in the Total War Warhammer universe. I'll show you and explain the characteristics, how to recruit the unit and of course the most important part, how to use the unit. All this in a cinematic, useful and hopefully entertaining way. In this very first episode I'll be showcasing the Demigryph Knights and the Demigryph Knights with Halbards, available to the Empire. These are one of the most powerful cavalry units in the game and I will show you why in a minute. Demigryphs are fearsome creatures, 50% lion, 50% eagle, a giant muscled monster overlapped by thick layers of armored plates, a beast that's fast, strong and bloodthirsty. According to the Warhammer lore, Demigryphs are very few in numbers and could be found deep inside the darkest reaches of Reiksguard forest. The final quest for a select few of the knightly order was to capture and tame a Demigryph and to break it to his will. Many failed and were ripped to pieces by the mighty beast, but only a few succeeded and managed to obtain a powerful companion and even greater prestige. The fact that these knights are so rare is represented in the game by its unit size. They come with 24 men in a unit, which makes it by far the smallest cavalry unit in the entire game. Before we jump into the unit stats and strengths, let's take a look at how to recruit these guys in the campaign first. The Demigryph Knights units are the most powerful cavalry units in the Empire's roster and can therefore only be recruited in the mid to late game of your campaign. Both units can be recruited from the Menagerie, which is a tier 3 building in the stables chain. In order to get access to them though, you will also need to build the Armory. Both buildings can only be built in a level 4 provincial capital, which makes them quite hard and challenging to get. Now let's take a look at how they perform on the battlefield. On ultra unit sizes, both the Demigryph Knights and the Demigryph Knights with Halbards have 6000 hit points. This means that each soldier in the unit has 250 HP. To compare, a Black Knight unit for the Vampire counts has 6480 hit points, meaning that each individual soldier in that unit has 108 HP. So the fact that Demigryph Knights come in these small sizes might look bad, but actually doesn't matter as much because they almost have the same amount of HP as normal cavalry units. Both Demigryph units also cause fear and frighten the enemy, giving those affected a leadership aka morale penalty of 10, which is quite a lot. Besides this, their only other trait is the fact that they can hide in woods. Now let's take a look at the general statistics for the normal Demigryph Knights. They're quite hard to compare though, because in general they're higher than other similar units, the stats, in order to compensate for their small unit size. 130 armor is extreme though, and this is the highest amount of armor for a cavalry unit in the game. Besides this, they also use shields, which block 30% of all small arms missile fire. While 70 leadership is normal and average for elite units, their 80 speed is very interesting. Most heavy cavalry units are quite slow of course, but this is actually one of the fastest shock cavalry units in the game, and the fastest in the elite shock cavalry department alongside the Hex Raid for the Vampire counts. Demigryph units are even faster than a standard Empire Knight, Black Knight, Orc Boar Boys and Chaos Knights. The melee attack, melee defense and the charge bonus is also really good, but as said might look a little higher because of the compensation for their unit size, which makes them hard to compare. The most interesting stat for this unit though is the weapon damage. 66 is an insane amount, but the best part is the fact that they deal 48 armor piercing damage, which is basically damage that ignores any form of armor. This is the only shock cavalry unit with armor piercing damage this high, and that makes them great against high armor targets of course. Let's test this out on the battlefield. On the left side are the armor piercing Demigryphs and on the right side are the Reiksguard, who offer mostly non-armor piercing damage. Keep in mind that the Reiksguard is a little bit weaker than the Demigryph unit though, in terms of stats. But first I've put them against a low armored swordsman unit. After an epic looking charge, the Demigryph Knights managed to rout the unit in 14 seconds. Which is quite fast of course. If you do the same with Reiksguard, they also have an epic charge and they manage to kill the swordsman unit in 23 seconds. Both are really good and powerful. If you put them against the heavily armored great swords unit, both units will obviously have a harder time. The charge for the Demigryph looks great again and they manage to rout the unit in 43 seconds. The Reiksguard will do the exact same, however they will have a much harder time. The Reiksguard actually gets routed after a long engagement lasting almost 4 minutes. This easily shows how Demigryph Knights excel in charges against heavily armored infantry units. There's also a Demigryph Knight with Halbard units though. If you compare the two Demigryph units, we can see that the Halbards give the unit a massive 32 bonus versus cavalry, but it comes at the cost of a lower melee attack, melee damage, the lack of a shield and a lower charge bonus. The idea is that Demigryph Knights are anti-infantry, while the ones with Halbards should only be used against cavalry. Now on the battlefield I found out that both units are basically very strong against everything. Both units manage to rout almost every infantry and cavalry unit in the game. The normal anti-infantry Demigryph Knights, for example, even managed to heavily defeat the Bretonnian Grill Knights, for example, which is one of the most powerful cavalry units in the game, again. Let's try to see and test the difference though. In this one I've put both Demigryph units against Chaos Chosen with heavy weapons, very powerful units of course. After a long engagement, the normal anti-infantry Demigryph Knight actually manages to defeat the Chosen, but barely. The anti-cavalry Demigryphs with Halbards actually lose the fight though, after a very long engagement, so only against the strongest infantry you can spot the difference between the two units. As said, both Demigryph units destroy pretty much every other cavalry unit in the game, so to test their strength against cavalry, I've put the Demigryph Knights and the ones with Halbards against each other. Here you can easily spot the difference. The ones with Halbards do way better and manage to kill off the normal Demigryph unit. So to conclude this, both Demigryph Knights units destroy pretty much every low and mid-tier infantry unit in the game. If you expect to be fighting these types of units, I would recommend bringing the ones with Halbards, as they're able to do the job just as good as the normal ones, however they come with the extra bonus versus large in case you need it. The normal ones are better, but you don't really need that extra power. Against elite infantry units it might be good to consider bringing the regular ones though, as they are able to take down enemies way quicker and easier than the highly armored elite enemy units. If you're expecting a lot of enemy cavalry, always bring the ones with Halbards of course. I like using these guys as my elite anti-infantry force. They're good against cavalry, however they will make a lot of unnecessary damage, take a lot of unnecessary damage, and they will not impact the battle as much. Their charges on infantry are brutal and you should definitely try to cycle charge enemy lines with them. Also make use of their high speed. If you're being chased by cavalry, don't just engage them, most of the time you can simply outrun them. They're quite vulnerable to being overwhelmed and missile fire though, because of their lower total health and unit size, so just keep them running and charging. That would be my advice on how to use them. So that's all for this first unit overview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback, let me know in the comments down below, and I will hopefully see you all in the next one. Bye bye.